Welcome to the Victorian Aboriginal News Referendum 23 Tapes podcast. I'm your host, Charles Parkiner.
Victorian Aboriginal News acknowledges and pays respect to traditional owners and custodians across Australia. We acknowledge the elders who have gone before, those who currently lead their communities, and those who will follow in years and generations to come.
Over the past several weeks and months, there's been a fair amount of commentary specific to what many claim to be one of the main downfalls of The Voice, and that is a lack of supporting real outcomes at a local and regional level right across the country. In other words, local and regional voices. These are the same voices as detailed in the 2021 Langton and Calma co-design report, the same voices as legislated by the South Australian Government in March when that state passed into law the First Nations Voice Act 2023, and they're also the same voices as being proposed by the First Nations Referendum Working Group. In brief, local and regional voices would consist of local First Nations people elected by and representing their own communities, working with various levels of government and other agencies to achieve real outcomes on the ground. Everyone, it seems, supports local and regional voices, yet a supposed absence of them in the federal government's plans seems to be a common complaint voiced by many no-campaign advocates. In fact, speaking to the press on the 5th of April, in the wake of the Liberal Party's decision to support a no vote on the referendum, the leader of the Liberal Party, Peter Dutton MP, had this to say.
Well, the Liberal Party resolved today to say yes to constitutional recognition for Indigenous Australians, yes to a local and regional body so that we can get practical outcomes for Indigenous people on the ground. But there was a resounding no to the Prime Minister's Canberra voice. We want to make sure that we can get the best possible outcomes for Indigenous Australians, and we do that through recognising Indigenous Australians in the Constitution and by providing for their say, their voice to be heard by government in a very clear way, but at a local level.
A few minutes later, during that same press conference, in commenting on the federal government's approach to local and regional voices, Mr Dutton said this.
The government has decided to go with a national body and to exclude a local and regional voice. Just be very clear on this. The Prime Minister is proposing that we not have a local and regional voice.
That statement of Mr Dutton's is actually in stark contrast to the conversations we've had here on this program with supporters of The Voice. So in order to gain some real clarity on this matter and to find out more about the local and regional bodies, we reached out to Thomas Mayo, who, along with being one of the signatories to and a long-time champion of the Uluru Statement of the Heart, is also on the First Nations Referendum Working Group. This is the group which is advising the federal government on the proposed mechanics of The Voice. Thomas, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, brother.
Thomas, according to the 2021 co-design report, Professors Langton and Calma propose that The Voice be elected by and from the membership of over 30 local and regional voice groups across Australia. This is also what's been legislated for the SA Voice. In the design principles document that was announced by the Prime Minister on the 23rd of March, though, local bodies were implied but not specified. So are the local and regional voices still on the cards if the yes vote gets up?
Yeah, absolutely, Charles. You can't have a national layer of representation without the local and regional layers because, each feeds into the other. For example, if you only have local and regional voices and not a national voice, then our people are working in silos across this vast country, and the common issues such as things like housing and the justice system, the way funding is directed in communities and programs are run, those types of things can't be taken up collectively to get the best effect. If you only have a national voice, then you're not being informed by where the issues are on the ground. So it really is a common sense thing. And as you mentioned, the Langton Calma report details how that would work. The existing structures are already doing that in practice, and the South Australian model is legislated, ready to go, feeding into the national body and linking up with the similar local and regional voices around the country that will be established.
So what are the expected roles of the local and regional voices? Do you see them working with state government and with local governments to advise and collaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the reasons why Indigenous leaders insisted that the voice be able to make representations to the executive government as well as the parliament. You see, the parliament makes the laws and policies, but the implementation of the policies on the ground at that local and regional level is done by the executive government. And the local and regional voices need that opportunity to do that engagement on the ground about particular issues for those communities. And as we know from the evidence, that when Indigenous people are properly listened to and part of the solutions and implementation of the solutions, then you get the best results. And that's why the voice will be such an effective thing.
The Liberal and National parties both have come out essentially in favour of local and regional voices, or at least in ensuring that actions take place at a local and regional level. Do you see that these local and regional voices will result in these local actions and initiatives taking place?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's a common sense thing. You empower Indigenous people in their communities, then they're going to improve their lives. Where things go wrong is where they're not involved, where decisions are made thousands of kilometres away in Canberra, completely disconnected from the realities on the ground and without an understanding of culture and the history of how things have happened in those communities and to our people. So without a doubt, the local and regional layers, as well as the national layer of representation, are all going to work together well and see the best results.
In order to get the local and regional voices into place, the people have to be identified and appointed, elected. What's the process that the referendum working group is currently considering to advise the government?
Well, in the design principles that were released with the announcement that the Prime Minister made with some of us up there with him about the wording that will go into the Constitution and the question, the last part of those design principles is a commitment to a further process of consultations with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in their communities about how those things will happen. It's not going to be anything unusual or radical. Representative bodies are something that are common in our democracy, whether it's unions, industry associations, our system of government itself, elected members from electorates, those types of things. This is something that should be led, though, by the communities themselves on how they will seek to choose their representation.
Just in referring to that document that the Prime Minister did announce on the 23rd of March, there was one point of great emphasis in there, and that is that the voice, and I would assume that relates also to the local and regional voices, would not be appointed by executive government. So these concerns that a lot of people have come up with over the past month, saying they're going to be selected people, hand-picked people, that seems to be a bit of a fallacy. It's going to be more of these are the people the community wants, rather than these are the people the government may want.
Yeah, absolutely. The whole reason our people have strived for a voice for so long is because we're sick and tired of politicians choosing who speaks for us. We're also sick and tired of certain individuals putting up their hand and saying they speak for us when, really they're representing their own interests. There's no accountability or transparency at the moment to our advocacy, and we should be able to hold our representatives to account, just how any other democracy works, and we should be able to see exactly what our representatives are saying on our behalf in a transparent way. And when we have this voice that gives us those opportunities, then we're going to have the strongest possible representations and also greater accountability for the decision makers, so that they stop making harmful decisions and their excuses that they've, like Dutton recently, when he announced that they're going to, that the Liberals are going to go against this officially. he quoted an anonymous Indigenous person that he spoke to in Alice Springs. Now,
Yes, I noticed that. Yeah.
I mean, this is what they can get away with in the absence of a voice. So, of course, we need a voice.
Now, in the wake of that announcement, just heading back to Peter Dutton, we had Ken Wyatt resign from the Liberal Party, then Julian Leeser remove himself from the front bench. Do you, in your own little circle of contact, see further cracks appearing within the Conservative parties in their approach to the referendum?
Well, not that I'm very well aware of. I am hopeful, though, that the decisions of Ken Wyatt and Julian Leeser will lead other Liberal politicians to look into their heart and think about what Lisa said, about what you're going to say to your children and your grandchildren about what side of history you're on, and decide to come onto the side of the yes case. There's already a lot of Liberal voters and national voters that support this campaign. I think that the Liberal and National Party are actually out of touch with their membership and certainly the broader Australian public.
And we're currently reaching out to Julian Leeser and also to Ken Wyatt and others within the Liberal and National Party to discuss this matter. Thomas, I want to thank you again for your time. I'll let you get back to your important work, and we will, of course, be catching up well before the referendum.
Thanks, Charles.
Well, I hope that this has clarified some of the misconceptions, misinformation, mistruths that you may have heard or are hearing about local and regional voices. I do encourage you, if you have questions about any aspect of the referendum, and that's either on the yes or the no side of the campaign, then please let us know by reaching out via our website at vicaboriginalnews.com.au. Until our next episode, stay safe and stay informed.